Hello everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the AWS Primer series. This is the part 19th, and in the from the previous two sessions we have been discussing about AWS ALB. So Jyoti is going to teach us about more details. This would be the part 3 of the AWS ALB mini series as part of the AWS Primer series. So I will hand it over to Jyoti now for today's session. Jyoti, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Faz. So, hi all. Yes, so this is in continuation of our previous two session. So today we'll be targeting to do two labs on ELB. So the first lab would be setting up ELB across VPCs. Okay, if you've got multiple VPC, so how do you do a load balance between those two? And second would be use a combination of NLB and ALB. So NLB, which is our network load balancer, we can use it as an internet facing load balancer, and then ALB as our internal load balancer. Okay, so we'll talk about the use cases where this kind of structure would be required. Okay, so a little bit on the recap. Yeah, so let's do a small recap on whatever we have studied till now before we start with the actual lab. So till now we've studied what is the purpose of your load balancer. It is to distribute your traffic in case of high load situation. This ensures high availability of your application. Okay, and we study there are three types of load balancer. Earlier we had a classic load balancer, now which is no longer available. So the classic load balancer used to work as both your layer 4 and layer 7 load balancer. Okay, now we have a separate load balancer. So for layer 4 you have network load balancer, which works for your traffic like TCP and UDP. And then you have your layer 7, which is for your HTTP and HTTPS kind of application. Okay, and then third is your gateway load balancer. Okay, so the gateway load balancer, I haven't come to that topic yet, so even I need to study. So once I'll study and I'll understand, I'll let the group know too. Okay, and then we talked about health check. Okay, and routing algorithm. So how exactly your load is distributed across various servers. So the common routing algorithm is your round robin algorithm. Okay, then there could be something known as least connection request. So any server which is having least connection, okay, you will be sending your traffic to that, right? And then we understood, okay, in case of application load balancer, you can distribute your traffic based on various parameters. Like it could be either kind of the HTTP request, whether it's a get or post, or based on your query parameter or path parameter or your content of the headers, right? So this is how you use your ALB. Okay, now today's lab, and we have done a separate lab on both the two, which were very simple lab to help you understand the difference between two load balancer. So remember our first example which we did, that was for application load balancer, wherein we had created 4 servers, 2 for debit card and 2 for credit card. And we said that whenever in URL, okay, whenever you're getting a request which has debit in the URL, so you'll be sending your traffic to the debit card server. Okay, and similarly for credit card, if you see something as credit in the URL, the traffic would go to your credit card server. So that lab is present in our part 17 of the series. Then in previous session we talked about our network load balancer, right? So we saw how traffic was getting distributed in case of your network load balancer, right? And we also studied that your target. Okay, so when we talk about load balancer, we have a concept of this target group. Now your target group could be an instance, it could be your IP address, okay, or it could be your application load balancer. So when you create a network load balancer, your target can be any of these, right? So the second lab, when we'll do that second lab, you'll see how I am going to use ALB, which is your application load balancer, as a target group for my network load balancer. Okay, yeah. So let's start with our first lab. So let me just give you a theory of what first lab is all about. Okay. So meanwhile, you can also start your management console. Okay. So what we'll do, we'll create. So all this I'll be doing it in the same region. So I'll create two VPC. Okay. One having a CIDR block as 10.0.0.16. Okay, and another one as 192.168.0.0. So for those who are not able to follow what exactly we mean by CIDR, okay, how did we, like, what does dash 16 or dash 24 means? So refer to our topic on AWS networking, which we did in the series. So there I have explained in depth about what CIDR blocks are, okay, and what do we mean by IPv4, what do we mean by private subnet and public subnet, etc., and how do we come up with those subnet, right? So what we'll do, we'll create two VPC. The first one has a CIDR block of 10.0.0.0, and the another one would have a CIDR block of 192.168.0.0. Okay. So in first VPC, we'll create two subnet. Okay. Both would be public subnet, right? And why we need two subnet? Because for the load balancer, like the application load balancer, which we are going to create, it is mandatory to have two subnets, right, or two availability zone, because we are creating, why we are creating load balancer, right, for distributing your traffic for higher availability. So it's prerequisite that we have two availability zone. Okay. Then in VPC2, we'll create just one subnet, because that is not going to be our primary VPC, right? So one would be enough. But the whichever is your primary VPC for your load balancer, that has to have two subnets. Okay. Then we'll create a internet gateway. So by now you would understand like why internet gateway is required. Okay. So it's for communication of your servers over internet, right? Then all these things, like, we'll add a route in the route table for all these IP addresses. Okay. Now we need to pair the VPC to VPC. So then we'll do a VPC pairing, right? And then we'll update our route table again to tell, like, okay, if a request is coming for VPC1, right? So how are you going to go through VPC2 and vice versa? Okay. So you'll see in this lab, we have covered all the topics which we have studied till now. So you have got a concept of VPC, public subnet, route table, VPC pairing, internet gateway. Okay. Finally, once we have done with all these things, like all the prerequisites, okay, we'll go ahead and create three instances. Two instances will associate with our VPC1, and one EC2 instance will associate with our VPC2. Okay. Now, finally, the 9th and 10th step talks about your load balancer. So what we'll do here now, as I told you in the starting, that your target group could be identified based on IP addresses, instances, okay, Lambda functions, and your, what do you say, application load balancer. So you've got four types of a target group, right? So today we'll be using the IP address as a target group. Okay. So I mean, whenever somebody would hit our application using DNS of ALB, right? So that would, now the traffic would be distributed based upon the IP addresses. Okay. Yeah. So let's get started. Just a second. Yeah. Okay. So you can go to any region. So let me go to North Virginia. Okay. Before that, let me show it to you, like, what I meant by target group, just to advise. See, when you create a target group, okay, so this is what I was telling you, that till now we have done load balancing using instance, right? In this lab, we'll be doing load balancing using IP address, and can you see this? Application load balancer. Okay. So even your application load balancer could be a target group for another load balancer, right? Yeah. So guys, now go ahead and create two VPC. Okay. So how do you create a VPC, right? So yeah, you can follow along. Okay. So watch me doing it, and then I'll wait and you can go ahead and perform the same step. Okay, Fez and Arjeet.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, even your management console and my management console can vary because I have adopted to a newer version. Okay, you might be getting a notification if you have just logged in that whether you want to switch to the latest console. Okay, yeah. So I'm going ahead and creating my first VPC. Okay, select. So this is the cider block I'm keeping for my first VPC, which is 10.0.0./16. Okay. You can name it anything. So let me name it as VPC1 only. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Now you can say create VPC. Okay. Right. So your VPC1 is created. We'll go ahead and create another VPC. Okay. So create VPC. You can name it anything. So I'm naming it as VPC2. Okay. The cider block for this is 192.168.0.0/60. Okay. Yeah. So now we've got both my VPCs, right? Let's go ahead and create subnet, the second step. Okay. So subnet, create subnet. So I'm associating my subnet with VPC1. Okay. So I can name it as VPC1 sub1. Okay. And maybe this subnet could be part of my first availability zone. Okay. And what is my cider block for this? Okay. Yeah, this is my first one. Yeah, let's go ahead and create second VPC. Sorry, second subnet in VPC1. Okay, so we can name it as VPC1 sub2. Let's add it to second availability zone, and the cider block is 10.0.1.0.24. Okay. Oh, sorry, this I had already taken. So sorry. Yeah. Okay. So we've created two subnets in my VPC1. Let's create another subnet in my VPC2. Okay. So now this time I'll select VPC2. Okay. So this is my VPC2 subnet 1, any availability zone. Okay. And the cider block for this would be 192.168. Okay. Yeah. Right. So yes, let's revise what we have done till now. We created two VPC. Okay. And this we are creating in North Virginia. You can select any region which you want. Then I have created three subnet. Two I have associated with VPC1, and one I have associated with VPC2. Okay. Now let's go ahead and create internet gateway. Okay. So we'll create two internet gateway for both the VPC. Okay. So this is my first internet gateway. So let me name it as IG1. Okay. Yeah. Now I'm associating my internet gateway 1 with my first VPC. Okay. Why can't we see our VPC 1 here? Remember, because there is a default VPC which gets created, right? Just a second. Yeah. Okay. See, my default internet gateway is already associated with VPC1, right? So I need to detach this. Okay. Now if I go and attach to VPC, I'll see VPC1. Okay. So let me go ahead and create my second internet gateway. Okay. Same thing. I'll go ahead and attach this internet gateway to my VPC2. See, right now, guys, I'm just doing our basic steps, which is required to set up VPC, which is like you create a VPC, you create subnet, you create an internet gateway, right? And now finally, we'll go ahead and update route table. So we have covered all these things in our previous session. Okay. We are just uh, reusing it for today's lab. Okay. Now let's go to route table. Okay. So remember, we have a main route table and a custom route table, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let's use the default route table only. Let's not create another. So see, these two, we already have a route table. Okay. So the one which is associated with VPC1, let's rename it as VPC1 default. Default. Okay. Now, what is the next step we do? We define the routes, right? So let's pick VPC1 first, okay? And go to route and add a route for which IP address 0.0, okay? So what does that mean? Any server in this subnet, if it wants to communicate with any other server which is outside my VPC, it would go through internet gateway. Okay. Yeah. And I'll associate my subnets. Okay. So these two are the subnets which I'm associating. Yeah. We'll do same step with our second route table. Okay. So which is my VPC2. Again, route. Internet gateway. Okay. So let me know, guys, when you are done till here. Okay. Let me associate my subnet which I had created with VPC2. Okay. Archit, do let me know if you're able to follow along. So this requires you to uh, watch our previous session as well, which we have done on AWS networking and VPC. So if you've attended that, you'll be able to follow what exactly I'm doing. Yeah. So Faz, let me know once you are done.
Yeah,
with
we
the
can
setup?
proceed. Yeah.
Okay, we can guess. So till now what we did, guys, we have done basic setup which is required for our VPC. Now what we have to do is we need to pair both the VPCs, right? So how do you do a pairing between the VPC? We have something called as VPC pairing, right? Okay. So what I'll do, create pairing connection, VPC1 to VPC2. Okay. See, since we are in same region, okay, so we can create any of the VPC as the requester. So for example, I'm picking VPC1 as my requester and acceptor would be my VPC2. Okay, and create pairing connection, right? So now you've got this is pending, right? If we had created in a different region, what we had to do, we had to log into that region and then accept this request. But since it's in the same region, okay, so you can go ahead and accept the request. So our job is not yet done. Yes, we have created VPC pairing, but we need to update our route table, both the route tables which are associated with VPC1 and VPC2. We need to give the path, right? So we go to route table. Yeah, so in this, if you see, there's route only for the local, okay, and the for anything outside our VPC. Let's add a route for our second VPC, 192.168.0.0/16. Okay, and this is via pairing connection. Similarly, we'll do it with second route table. Okay. Yeah. 10.0.0.0/16 pairing. Yep. So we are done with our setup, which is we have created two VPC. In first VPC, we have created two subnet. Okay. And in second VPC, we created just one subnet, right? Then we have updated our route table. Both the route table, okay, have both have association with our internet gateway. Then we went ahead and we created a VPC pairing and we have done that update in the route table as well. Okay, so this part we have done. We have done until our step 7. Okay, is this done till here?
Yes.
Faiz and Arjit. Okay, Arjit, you can mention in chat if you're having any question. Have you done the setup till now, Arjit? Should we go ahead? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So now what we have to do is we need to create 3 instances, right? So we'll use same script which we used last time, Faiz. Okay, for installing HTTPD server, etc. Okay, so let me give you that script in the chat. Just keep in all the 3 instances, just keep changing the text. right?
Okay.
So in the first, say debit server 1, in second, say debit server 2, and similarly in the third, say debit server 3, so that you can see on your
The
browser.
difference. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I'm adding that script. Okay. So now what I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and create 3 instances. Okay. So remember, 2 you have to associate with VPC1. Okay. And associate different subnet. Okay. So EC2 instances, launch instance. Okay. Pick the first one in the free tier. Okay. Yeah, T2 micro. Yeah. So you won't be getting this error. I am getting, because what I had done is I had deleted the default subnets. Okay. So
Yes.
I'll VPC1 and select first subnet. Okay. Auto assign public IP. Yes. Enable. And in the user data section, add the script which I have given you. Okay. Add storage, nothing. Tag, you can name any tag. So you can say VPC1 server 1. Okay. Configure security group. So here you have to add a rule for HTTP. Okay. Yeah. So you can say source as anywhere. Okay. Let's name this and we'll reuse it. VPC12. Okay. Review and launch. You can pick any existing key pair or create a new. So let me create a new, which is pairing. Download the key pair and launch instance. Though we don't have to log into the instance, okay, because that script would do all the installation. Similarly, let's go ahead and create another EC2 instance. Okay, this time again your VPC would be first VPC, but select the second subnet. Okay. Yeah, second. Auto assign public, enable. Okay. So see, I'm changing the text as this is for debit server 2. This is for debit server 2. Name VPC1 server 2. Let's select existing one. What was the name of our existing VPC12? Okay. Review and launch. Let me, what was pairing, right?
Yes.
Okay. Meanwhile, this is setting up. Let's go ahead and create our third server. Okay. The third one we have to associate with VPC2. Okay. Yeah. And I'll add same thing, but just the name as 3. Add tag name VPC2 server 1. Configure security group. Okay, for this VPC. Let's create VPC 23. You can name it anything, just C23. And I need to open a port 80. Okay. Launch. Okay. Yep. Meanwhile, let's check the one which is showing running and 2x2. Let's see if it is showing correct message or not. Okay, so what we do, we take the public IP. Yeah, right. So we are getting, this is for debit server 1. Right. See, by default, this goes to port 80, so we don't have to specify the port number. Yeah, this is for debit server 2. And just let's wait for our third server to show up. So hope you're following, Faz.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, it's not up yet. Let's wait for a second. What's wrong? I think we have to log in to see what mistake we did. Okay, now it's up, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we have done till here, till step 8. Okay. Right now, see, I haven't touched our load balancer. It's all basic setup, creating instance, associating it with the VPC, creating VPC, subnet, updating route table. Now, the last 2 steps, they are for creating the application load balancer. Okay. So what I'll
Yes.
do, I'll go to target group, right? I'll create a target group. Now here, what we are going to select as my target type, IP address. Okay. Let me just duplicate this, because now we are not going to provide the instance, rather the IP, private IP addresses for the instances which we have created. Okay. Yeah. So IP address. Okay. Target group name, we can name it as TG Vpc1. Okay. This is listening on port number 80. What is my primary target VPC, which is VPC1. Okay. Health check, let it be default. Next. Okay. Now here I have to provide the IP addresses, and the IP address would be the private IP address. Okay. Why not public IP address? Because public IP address, they keep changing, right? Moment I
Yes.
stop, yeah, or restarted. So let me give my private IP address for the first one. Private IP address for the second instance. Okay. Include as pending below. What happened? Oh. Okay, so I've got both of them. I need to add a IP address for the third instance also, which is part of VPC2. So I'll tell you how we add that. Okay. Yeah. Now you can select this register target. Okay. And this time you'll say other private IP address. Okay. So this is my base VPC, right? VPC1 was my base, right? So I want to add an IP address of my VPC2, right? So I'll select other private IP address. Okay. And now I'll be able to add the IP address of my third server, which is part of VPC2.
You need to remove that blank. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we've got all the three, right? Now let's go ahead and create my application load balancer. Okay. Create load balancer. I'll select application load balancer. It's for HTTP and HTTPS traffic. That's why I had enabled port 80 while creating those instances under security group. Okay. Create. I can name it as VPC 12. This is internet facing. Okay. VPC 1. Okay. And in security group, I'm picking this. No, 12 had port 80 open, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I'll select if you're getting request on port 80, where do I need to send my traffic to? This target group. Okay. And this target group has got 3 IP addresses associated with it, right? Yeah. So right now it's provisioning. Once it's active, we'll see. So now when we'll hit the DNS of this load balancer, we should see that request being sent from first server till third. So there should be a round robin way by which your traffic should get distributed. So first time when you'll hit, it would go to one out of those 3. Second time it would go to the second one out of the 3, and third time for the third one. Okay. So let it become active. So till now, the 2 examples which we had done, that time we had kept just one VPC, right? So now we have to put, there could be a requirement, right? That we want to launch the same instance, right? Of your application, but in a different VPC. So now how do you distribute your traffic in the second VPC? Okay, so this lab covers that part. But still provisioning. Yeah, active. So what I'll do, I'll take the DNS name. So the request went to my server 1. Okay, let me refresh to server 3. It's going to 132. Okay.
Yes.
See, so your traffic, if it went to all the 3 servers in a round robin manner. Okay. And as you know, 1 and 2 was part of VPC 1, and your third server, it was part of your VPC 2. Okay. So now, if you know your application has been set up this way, it is great. It has instances in a different VPC, and every time you are getting a response just from one VPC and not from, so you know, like how to troubleshoot, what could have gone wrong. Okay, maybe in one VPC you've got have a latest code, like whenever a code deployment happened. So in VPC 1 the code deployment was done, so you were seeing your latest changes, but in VPC 2 it was missed, or during deployment there was some failure, right? So now you know where all to go and do the troubleshooting. So Faz, did this work for you?
Yes.
Okay. So moving to our next lab, I have a hard stop of 5, so I'll give you a background of the next lab, and probably in next session we'll do that lab. Plus, now we'll do a combination of auto scaling and load balancing. So we have studied auto scaling individually. Okay, we have done few labs on elastic load balancer individually. Now we are going to club both these labs. Okay. So let me talk to you about my second lab and use cases, right? So let's talk about this lab, what is the use case behind this? Okay. So for example, nowadays, we have a multi-tenant architecture wherein your single instance is serving a lot of customer. So maybe there's this customer or client of yours which has got certain restrictions, okay, because of which he or she cannot access our application. Okay, maybe for example, if this part was not there, this static IP address part was not there, right? So now you've seen how I was accessing my ALB with the DNS name, right? So there was one way. What this client could have done is the client could have added the DNS name in firewall to whitelist, right? But now your firewall, they don't support whitelisting of your what do you say, DNS. They require a IP address, right? So second thing could have been, uh, don't think about this part right now. I'm just talking client, and suppose you had a application load balancer, and behind application load balancer we had our servers, right, which is our application. So if client want to access this application, how we are going to do it? Using my ALB now, and ALB then maps to the backend servers, right? So one way was to whitelist my DNS, right? I know my DNS, right? This was my DNS, right? When I was, see, this is my DNS. So I can whitelist this at the client's firewall. But we know now firewall, they don't support DNS name whitelisting. So second option was to give the public IP address, right? But we know that the public IP address, they keep changing, right? So even public IP address, you cannot give it to your client for whitelisting. Every time it would change, and you have to ask your client to update their firewall setting, right? And client, they might not like it, because you want to give a client a seamless experience, right? So what is my third option? Third option is to give the static IP address. Okay, so how do you get that static IP address? So remember, in our network load balancer session, we saw that we can associate your static IP address, which is your elastic IP address, with your network load balancer as well. So what we'll do is we'll have a combination of application load balancer and network load balancer. Okay, just a second. Right? So remember, we heard this term internet facing and internal when we were creating also application load balancer. Right now you would have seen there was two options, internet facing and internal. So now your network load balancer, it would be my internet facing load balancer, and your application load balancer, this one, the second one, it would be my internal. Okay, and this would have IP address of my backend server. Okay, and we'll do a setup in such a manner that we get a static IP address, right? So we'll give the client the static IP address. Okay, now my client can whitelist the static IP address. Next time, what if my NLB gets corrupt, right? So you can create a new NLB and then again associate the static IP address with it, right? So client won't be impacted. So now request would go to your NLB, and in NLB as a target, we have selected application load balancer. Now then your application load balancer would distribute the traffic accordingly. Like what you added in the URL, was it debit or was it credit? Okay. So let me show you the part where you can see that you can associate a application load balancer as a target. I had shown you in the starting as well, but just reiterating. So see, if I go to my load balancer and I do create load balancer, yeah, create. See, first you see this internet facing and internal. So my network load balancer would be internet facing. Okay. And my application load balancer would be internal. Okay. And okay, so I think I should show it to you, the target group part. Yeah. So when you go ahead and create a target group, see, what do you see? Instance. So we have done a lab using instance till now. Then today we did a lab using IP addresses. Okay. And see, third is Lambda function, and fourth is your application load balancer, right? So we in the next lab will use application load balancer as a target group for my network load balancer. Okay. And if you want to study this exercise, which we are going to do it in our next lab, you can refer to this document by Amazon. They have explained same thing in detail, which I was explaining you. See, common use cases for having this combination of NLB as internet facing and your ALB as internet internal. So they have given these are the three use cases. Okay. So I was talking about the second use case where you want a static IP address. Okay. And third is like, now remember I told you earlier we had a classic load balancer, which was both layer 4 and layer 7 load
Yes.
balancer. And then we came up with two separate NLB and ALB. So with this lab, we are seeing that we are using a combination of the two, which is kind of a classic load balancer. Okay. So I'm just giving you the lab in the chat. So this is what we are going to do in our second lab. Okay. And my final, the closure lab for the ELB would be combination of your load balancer and auto scaling. Okay. So that would mark, I mean, next session would mark the end of the ELB part, and then we'll proceed. I think we are left with 3-4 more topics like Route 53 is left, I guess. Then elastic file system is left 2 topic, and I think there was a couple of more. Yeah, so I think in next 5-6 session we should be able to wrap up our series.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's it from me, Faiz and Arjit.
Yeah, thank you, Jyoti. So Arjit, do you have any question from what we have done today? You can put it in the chat, or let me. Yeah, you can now ask the question directly. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Arjun. Yes. So thank you, Jyoti, for this wonderful session. And now I got to know that if there is something, or sometimes it happens that the application behaves strangely, that we get to see some new behavior, new build and old build as well. So that so if that kind of scenario comes forward, we can now debug and we can see that maybe one VPC has not deployed, means the code is not deployed to one VPC likewise. Yeah. So thank you for that, and we will all meet you in the next session at the same time, and the recording will be as always available in the YouTube channel later. Thank you so much. Have a happy weekend. Bye bye. Take care.
Okay, bye.